So let's make a formal introduction for our listener. Good afternoon, actually, good evening for you, Torsten. My name is Claudio. I'm calling you from Washington, D.C., from the studio in Fairfax City. We're very humble and grateful that Torsten Kinsella accepted our invitation to our show. Torsten, welcome to the show, man.
It's great to be here, Claudio. It's strange times, but we're hanging in there. That's the main thing.
Yeah, that's the first question that I have. I mean, we've been with the COVID situation. Well, we're going in a couple of months, going to be 2 years now. You know, a lot of musicians they end up leaving music world and doing something else for a living. Record label, producer, has affected everybody. You know, if you are a touring musician, you cannot tour and so forth. So how's the COVID situation affected you, your sanity, your family? How you holding up, man?
It's in one way, it's been good because we've had a lot of time to write music, and we've had time to kind of work on our guitar tones and change a lot of the sounds that I've been meaning to do for a long time. But financially, it's not as good as it normally would be. We're hanging in there. Very grateful to all our audience that listen to our music on Spotify and all the streaming platforms, and the publishing on that is keeping us going. We're getting anxious at this point because we really do want the shows to happen this year. Another year without shows would be it wouldn't be good, and for our sanity, I think it would be very important that we do get back out and do what, to at least feel like we're making and doing some work. A lot of the work we're doing is obviously behind closed doors, and it's which is great, but I think we're at the point now we're feeling a little bit anxious, and we do want to get back out and play live again.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. For me, as a consumer of music, go and see bands like yourself that are very good, and other bands, and I'm lucky that I live here in Washington, D.C., where we have too many venues. So it gives me a lot of satisfaction to see live show. Right? I buy a lot of vinyl and CDs and Blu-ray, but seeing a band live, it's an amazing experience. So hopefully the COVID will go away one day, man, and we go back to normal, whatever that means.
At the end, I know it's going to take time, and I'm hoping with this new variant, it'll be, maybe it's the sign of it kind of beginning to weaken, and hopefully by mid of this year or later this year, things will return to normal. I think it will take a couple of months. I have a feeling the summer is looking good for things kind of slowly coming back to normal around that point. Yeah. We have some dates in March, and who knows if they'll happen, but I think the April and May shows should happen this year.
Gotcha. So let's go back to the beginning. Were you born like in a musical family, if you will? How old were you when you began perhaps taking piano lesson or guitar lessons?
Yeah, my father was in a psychedelic rock band in the 60s called the Orange Machine, and he was the bass player. After that, in the 70s, he moved on to do kind of the show band scene here in Ireland, which was kind of doing country kind of cover versions kind of stuff. But my father was always, a rock kind of person at heart. And we grew up listening to everything from the Beatles to Led Zeppelin and even AC/DC, and in the 80s, we got into everything from The Cure to Metallica, and we left school around 1994, and we tried to. We had a rock band at the time. It really, we weren't really ready to do anything musically at that point. And around 1996, we created an electronic group called Super AD, and I think with that we started to kind of get the idea that we could do our own recordings and do our own productions. And I think it was only when we realized that we kind of had to bring bit of our rock background back in with the electronic stuff that we had kind of been working at, that things really started to happen for us. And in the year 2000, we'd written some songs for Super AD's last album, and we ended up not putting it out, but we ended up keeping some of those songs and putting it towards our first album with God and Astronaut, which was The End of the Beginning, which is actually 20 years ago to, I think, nearly next week. We put that album out, and we had Route 6666, which was a Super AD song, and Lost Symphony. So that was kind of started us on this path of creating a new sound. And I think when we wrote The End of the Beginning song that really shaped things to come, I guess. And I think when we played live, it took another twist, and Lloyd joined the group, and we kind of had, I guess it was a slightly less electronic vibe and a more live vibe, and that was kind of captured with our sophomore album, All Is Silent, All Is Bright, which was released in 2004, I believe. Beyond that, we still hadn't the opportunity to play live outside of this country. It's very, very difficult. It was almost like, now that we could release our own records, we thought, you know, we don't need a record company, but all of a sudden we realized you do need a booking agent in order to get shows outside of the country. And that took longer than I think it should have. I remember our first show, even outside the country, was in Munich in front of about 3 people. We drove all the way there and back, and it was nearly pointless. But the word did catch on over a period of time, and we started to build up a steady following. But we really only started touring properly around 2007 onwards with our album Far From Refuge. We did get a booking agent, and yeah, I think since then we've been kind of consistently trying to play Europe and around the world as best as we could. We did play the US back in, I think the earliest, I could be wrong, but I think it was 2008 or 2009 was the first time we played the US. And we were quite amazed at the amount of you know, fans over there that knew about us and came to the shows. It was very, very encouraging for us. The only crap thing at the end of it, our equipment got robbed, which is, you know, I look back at it now, you know, I suppose stuff like that happens. We have to be careful. We've been a lot more careful since those days, and we double check where we park our cars, and, you know, make sure that we take as much of the instruments in to the hotel room as we can. After that, you know, we started playing places that we didn't really realize we had such a huge fan base, in places like Russia to China and India. We were quite amazed at, you know, at playing some of these places. And in India, we were, I think that it was the bill of Joe Satriani who was playing the night after us, and we were billed as the headline act for the Friday, which I couldn't understand. How could that be? But it was a stadium full of people there to watch us that knew our music, so it was quite amazing, because we didn't realize that our music had, you know, reached so far to so many. Since then, obviously, we've put out 10 albums. Working on the 11th one, we're working on it even today, and we're just so pleased and excited to be still musically relevant, and that people still want to hear us. And we're very grateful to the audience, and we hope that we can continue for a little bit longer. We've a live album coming out this year through Napalm Records, which is in celebration of our first album, The End of Beginning, 20 years ago. It's a live version of that album, and we've put a great deal of effort into the mastering and the mixing and everything into it. And but it was all performed in one day in Wimbledon Studios in Dublin, and I think it's turned out really, really well. It gives the fans just a different version of our songs. They're like the versions that how we play them live, and I think that's interesting. It's not there to replace the album by any means, The End of Beginning. It's just a live version of that album.
Absolutely, yeah. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, no. So we with certain songs like Lost Symphony, and we'd never ever played them live before, so it was a real challenge playing some of the songs, and some of them turned out surprisingly good. Lost Symphony was really just an electronic song initially, so to get live drums and everything on it was very interesting. So yeah, we're really excited, and I think it's going to come out in about June of this year.
Yeah, so here when I live in the border with 2 states between Maryland and Virginia, Washington D.C. So in this area of the country here in the United States, it's a lot of people like good music. So in most of I would say all the bands in the United States come this way, because here that we have so many venues. People love great music, and you know, you guys are well known here. I don't know in the United States, but in this area, in the kind of DC proper, if you will, you guys are well known, and the music is very good. I mean, you know, if we stretch a little bit our imagination, you know, the acoustic electronic music is very well, is very popular in the United States. I mean,
Yeah,
like bands like, I don't know, Tangerine Dream, for example, right? Every time they have play here, they do very well. And, these, in 300 million, there's people that like classic, the people that like your kind of stuff and the classical rock, and from Genesis, from Pink Floyd, from Led Zeppelin, you know, Dead Can Dance, and so on. So it's people like music here, and they have a good disposable income. So high disposable income. So the people spend good money in seeing good bands. So you gotta after the tour is done in Europe, you need to come back here and tour here in the United States.
yeah. I mean, that's obviously our plan is to get back to the US as soon as we can. It's so hard to know exactly because this COVID thing is it's dragging on so long, and we know that we need at least put a solid year of here in Europe where we can make a lot more money than we can in the US. So we do need to kind of get our money back up. Playing in the US has always been frightfully expensive for us due to the visas, the flights, and also the taxes are quite crippling. You nearly need a US accountant to sort that all out. We usually lose 50% of whatever we make and straight off to local tax and state tax. And
Really? Wow.
yeah, because in order to get it back, you can hire these guys to do it, and we've priced it, but we'd need to be doing probably nearly 2-3 months of touring which is very difficult for some of us in the group, because some of us do have day jobs. To take that kind of time off could mean they might have to lose their job here. So we tend to kind of try to work 3 weeks, maximum 4 weeks at a time. That's kind of the length that we can tour. So it's very difficult for us to make money in the US, even though most of the shows are well attended. We do lose 50% straight away, and we did recoup from the last tour, but it does take about a month or two of solid work back here in Europe to kind of pay for it. So we're very grateful to our fans in the US, and we definitely do want to come back. And Washington, many fond memories there, and we've obviously played nearly everywhere in the US, from Seattle all the way to San Francisco to Los Angeles. The only place we haven't played, which we really want to, is Florida at some point, but we haven't got there yet. But we have been in Texas and stuff like that. But we love the US, and we love the food there too. It's hard to beat. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you guys formed the band with your brother, your twin brother, what, 20 years ago? Where I know the name, but some of our audience doesn't know where the name of the name of your band come from. Feel free to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I remember. I think it was certainly either the late '90s or the very early 2000s. Myself and Niels were, obviously we were doing wood floors, I should say. We were fitting wood floors and carpets at the time, and we had done a lot of work, but we quit, and we wanted to put all that energy into writing. It's very difficult to do a day job and then to do, put your best music out, if you're not full-time at it. So I remember when we were, we would do a full day in the studio, and then late at night we'd kind of watch some horror movies and stuff like that before we go to bed. And the movie called Nightbreed, which was a film by Clive Barker, who's famous for Hellraiser. And there was a quote in the movie by a monster who says, God is an astronaut and Oz is over the rainbow, or something to that effect. Name. So Neil shortened it to God. No, we can't use that as a full sentence. So we used God is an astronaut. And so it's some people don't like the name. To us, it's just a dark sci-fi kind of, nothing to be taken too serious kind of name, but it kind of suits the music that we make. And it's just stuck with us, and that's how the name came about.
I got you. Yeah, that's great. It's hard to read other interviews that people have done of your band. How you can actually describe your type of music. I mean, it's a combination of electronic music, krautrock, space rock, influence of Tangerine Dream. How would you describe yourself to someone who never seen your music or never heard your music?
Yeah, it's comprised of probably a lot of different elements. There's definitely I should probably tell you what it was at the very beginning, and then tell you how it kind of changed. Is probably a better way of explaining it. When we started with the Super AD project, we were kind of doing electronic house beat kind of music, and it didn't get a great reaction. So we thought maybe it'd be better if we kind of worked with trip hop style beats. So the first album was definitely influenced probably by groups like Massive Attack to a certain degree, and we were had obviously some dark gothic vibes like The Cure and that kind of stuff were influencing the kind of sound that we had. But when we played live, realized some of those electronic elements weren't really transferring as well as we'd hoped, and we changed some of the drums obviously to live drums and that kind of, and to more live guitars versus synths. And we fell into a scene called post-rock quite by accident. And we hadn't even realized it because we weren't really well schooled in that whole scene. But we learned, I remember actually playing in Cork, I think it was about 2004 maybe. And we used to have visuals running in the background of our shows. It was just a three-piece. It was just Lloyd, myself and Niels. He's a guy from the US as well. I think he was from Texas, and he says at the end of it, "That's awesome, guys! Explosions in the sky." He gives me a thumbs up. I had no idea what he was talking about because I thought he was talking about the explosions that we had on our visuals. So I looked it up later, and then I realized there's a whole scene called post-rock. So that was the first time I kind of heard of that, and obviously then we were introduced to groups like Mogwai and different things like that. But we kind of fell into that scene. Our songs were a lot shorter than theirs. We were like 4.5 minutes long. We were kind of listening to things also like Tangerine Dream, as you mentioned, and Faust and the krautrock scene. And I did like some of the heavy metal stuff as well. We did it when we were younger. We certainly liked a lot of the early Metallica stuff. I like and still like Nine Inch Nails. So influenced a little bit by some of the industrial rock stuff in a subtle way. But the most important thing musically, we wanted it to speak from ourselves rather than it being wishing we were in some other band. We were happy to kind of tell our story at this point. And so I think musically all the stuff that we've written is certainly it's come from our own personal experiences and what we've how we react to certain events in life and try to document it emotionally with our music. It's always been
absolutely. That's very important. Like somebody mentioned before to me, something like making music without compromise. You need to do what you like. I mean, if you're good at what you do and you like what you do, and it's like a niche area, there's always going to be, if the quality is good, and there's going to be a fan base that will follow stuff, right? Not everybody will be doing rock and roll or the Genesis of this world, the Dead Can Dance of this world. I mean, there's a wide range of listeners that like different things like myself. And if the quality is good, there will be room for you guys, Don't compromise yourself and do what you like and be good at it. And then there's going to be an audience. So it's important to do that,
Yeah, I think for us, you've got to really enjoy what you do. It's, to me, I feel very lucky that we've stuck to our guns. We never really tried to make something commercial, for the sake of being commercial to make money. We've always done what captures our imagination and gives us an escape, that's healthy for us. And the fact that it's resonated with people, we feel very fortunate, and that we can come down here and come up with unusual music and the stuff that you don't hear every day. Is very exciting for us to still be doing that kind of. I feel extremely lucky, and I really hope that it lasts as long as possible.
Absolutely, no, absolutely, man. And you guys you released the first album, and you got together what now, 2022, 20 years later. Have you ever thought that you would last that long? 10 years, 10 records after that, touring around the world, and after you guys put the first record out, have you ever thought that, man?
No, I don't think we thought we'd last that long. Initially we thought, when we started with the end beginning, that was actually our last record. We thought we just put out one thing that there was no compromise, something that no vocals, just keep it the way we wanted it, and it just took off. We were fully prepared to go back to doing carpets and wood floors and stuff at that point, but it's just started to pick up a bit of interest, just enough for us to say, okay, there's something here, let's keep working at it. I think from the All Is Violent album, it was kind of, we knew things had definitely picked up a huge notch or two forward. but it was very scary and trying to release the next album, Far From Refuge, which I remember, or it was a Moment of Stillness was an EP, but Far From Refuge at the time we've since turned it into an album. But Far From Refuge, I remember, didn't go down quite as well as All Is Violent, so we were kind of worried that maybe that was it for us even at that point. But we struggled on and head down. We're still here, and who knows how long we can last? Maybe, hopefully another 10 years if we're lucky.
No, absolutely. Would you say that you are more well known outside your country or in your country? Or
I'd say outside our country. I think Ireland is a weird relationship with us, really, in many ways.
Why you feel that way? But feel free to elaborate on that. What?
Yeah, again, I'd have to kind of go back to the beginnings of our career. When we started God as an Astronaut, before God as an Astronaut, we done again some of our own shows, and nothing really resonated. But when we put out God as an Astronaut, we found it still extremely hard to get any kind of like onto any of the TV shows. For example, there used to be a very influential Irish music show called No Disco, where they would play the kind of music, you know, that was our music would sit perfectly in with the kind of stuff that they were playing, and they weren't interested in playing it at all. And it seemed to us like maybe, you know, even at that point we were convinced maybe we're just not good at what we do, because we couldn't get anybody to agree that what we were doing was good, even back at, you know, at that time. But when we sent our music off to MTV in the UK, this is when they were actually playing music, not like the way it is today. They put it on a show called the 120-Minute Show, and we started to get a lot of interest just from those plays on MTV. And that was the first time it dawned on me that maybe, hold on, why didn't the show here in Ireland pick up on it? And you know, because MTV is certainly a much harder thing to get your songs played on, that's for sure. You know, there's a lot more competition. So it just got me thinking at the time. It's strange, just thinking, you know, I wonder why, you know, it's good enough for MTV, but it wasn't good enough for the shows here in Ireland. So that was the one thing that I can't fully explain why it was like that, but it was and is still like that. And then I remember when we were doing shows here in Ireland, we had a show on the same day as Primal Scream in Dublin. Primal Scream were playing in the Olympia, and we were playing in the Temple Bar Music Centre in Dublin. And we were obviously relying very much so on all the publications to publicise that our gig was on. And I distinctly remember the Dublin event guide leaving our listing out, which is, I thought, why would they do that? And it didn't make any difference. We actually ended up that night selling at the Temple Bar Music Centre with Primal Scream. I heard only had 70% people in there. So I just kind of felt, you know, there's some underground power that you can't deny. But I just thought, I think in Ireland, there's a case, maybe there's two ways of looking at it. One, the diplomatic way to look at it, I just don't think our music resonates with the tastemakers here in Ireland. That's probably the most diplomatic way I can put it. I think the music that we make isn't really what they like to push. It's not really what they're excited about. We do have an audience here that loves our stuff, and they're very dedicated, and we'll always sell out the Academy in Dublin, and we'll do well in Cork and a few places like that. But I don't expect to be getting any massive amount of radio play apart from Dan Hegarty, who's always been really lame. That's, I don't know, the journalists never really got behind what we do, and there's even pieces been written about us here of, you know, that we're big abroad but not too well known in Ireland. So it's been well documented that we do better abroad than we do here. But I'm not too worried about it. I just feel grateful that we can still play to a decent amount of people here in Ireland, and the fact that we can leave the country and play in front of loads of other people is you know, how can you complain at all? So I'm just happy to be making music.
Yeah, I get you. No, absolutely. Now, so 10 records later, and you know, where do you think the motivation come from to keep on going beside the pandemic, go on tour and do a couple of live recording, where it's so easy to give up, right? You know, the last 2 years have been difficult for everybody, and as a musician, perhaps you need to quit music and get another job, make something else for a living. And where do you think with the motivation come from for you to not giving up and keep on pushing?
for me, it keeps my sanity. You know, if I can't do this, you know, I would feel really depressed. And you know, we're without music, I feel my life would, in a funny way, would just fall apart. It gives me purpose. And of course, it's been tough. There's been times where you say, "Ah, forget about it. Let's not do this." But that's when I have a kind of an opposite reaction, where I want to try harder. If I start to even anyway feel like that, I have this fighting side to me that really just wants to really just keep, you know, if everybody else is unmotivated, I get more motivated. I just want to really push as hard as I can. It's very, very difficult to stay relevant in music. Styles are consistently changing, or you know, even more so now that live gigs. I find with live gigs were happening, styles and scenes were kind of slower because people were getting to maybe, you know, do a tour after the album. Now they're working on the next album and the next album. So there's more music in a funny way, I think, being released right now. And the internet audience out there are kind of going through many different styles. I think post-rock, as they call it, has since been moved on to post-punk now, I think, is where people are kind of focusing. I noticed a lot of bands that wanted to be post-rock bands are now post-punk bands. But that's all good. We don't mind whatever scene it is. We believe at the end of the day, the most important thing is the content is more important than the style. But saying that, I do realize we live in a world today with the same as content, and we're doing everything we can and experimenting as much as we can to stay up to date and musically relevant. And again, we don't want to repeat ourselves too much and, you know, weaken what we've put out in the past. So it's exciting for us to keep experimenting and keep coming up with new ways and new techniques and new styles if we can.
Yeah, I know, absolutely, absolutely. For me, like I mentioned before, I couldn't live without listening to music every day, like, I don't know, 3 hours a day or something. I will go crazy. You know, though I'm an engineer, I do something very different for a living, but you know, going to live gigs and buying new vinyl CDs, and I buy a lot of music, and it's my life. I mean, I need to listen to it. I will go crazy, you know. So, you know, it's like not having a computer, you know, or not being able to access the internet, like electricity goes out, I will go crazy, you know.
I mean, I'd be the same. I think music's so important, and especially during these times where, you know, it could be very, it's like Groundhog Day in many ways. You know, you can't really go anywhere at the moment, and, you know, the lockdown here, you can't really, there's nothing open really after 8 o'clock here. So music to me plays a vital role for a lot of people, and certainly for me.
Yeah, and in a way, music is like magic, right? You get a new CD or new vinyl, you put your headphone and you drink a beer, whenever it's 8 p.m., the light goes out, and you put your headphone and you go places, you know, in your imagination. So it's it's a
And
beautiful thing, you know.
that is the thing. I mean, as I said that once before, you know, not all of us can travel through space, but we can travel in our minds. So, you know, music to me, that's what it is to be able to escape the four walls and put yourself into a magical place. And that to me is what music is all about.
Absolutely, man. It used to be the time where people would go to a record store and then buy a vinyl and then open it up and look at the picture, look at both sides, and put the side A and then turn it over, put side B. That world in many ways is different nowadays. People buy CDs. Some of them don't buy CDs. Download music or go to YouTube, and they listen 10 seconds a song and go next. You know, what's your take in the stuff? You know, what's your thought about the changes in how people get and consume music? What's your opinion?
Yeah, there's positives and there's negatives to it. I obviously came from probably one of the last generations that did enjoy the idea of going down to a record store and buying a CD or a vinyl and unwrapping it, and the excitement to listen to it. And I remember buying, you know, albums like Metallica's Black Album or Disintegration by The Cure, and, you know, you listen to a couple of songs and you might not get it. So, but you bought it, you want to understand it, and you'll listen, you'll sit there and listen, and eventually the story starts to reveal itself, that there's something there that you didn't get on the first listen. And I think that's really important. Sometimes on the first listen, if something doesn't hit you, it doesn't mean it's not good. It might even mean that it's better than you think it is, because there's a little bit of listening in it. And I think today's generation are used to kind of music is more expendable. They've got an endless jukebox and things like Spotify where they can just chip it between each track. And the album is, I think, has taken a big hit from the fact that you don't have to listen to each of the songs, and it's, you know, if they don't enjoy it, they're on to the next one. And I don't think people are listening to music as, you know, as good as they would have had they, you know, have to sit there and listen to a CD or a vinyl without skipping tracks, of course. I think the positive, there's the distribution is better because, you know, you wouldn't be record stores, as you know, are notoriously hard to get, you know, your record in there if there's so many other more popular artists. So at least with the digital platform, there's plenty of room for other music that people can explore and find. And without the internet, I don't know if people would have heard of this, but we would have needed a huge record contract to, you know, and a good distribution deal to be able to get your records around the world. So from that point of view, I think it's been really healthy for artists that you don't need a big record company to get your music onto it. There's plenty of services like TuneCore and CD Baby and all the rest of the stuff for you to get your music up there. And I think that has been one of the real positive things, that independent artists have an outlet. So I have to say that's a huge positive that probably outweighs any of the negatives. Of course, another negative is this internet now is oversaturated with so much music that it's very, very difficult for anybody to kind of fly their flag high enough for people to notice them. There's just so much out there for people to try and even notice you. So I do feel sorry. I think there's a lot of good artists that probably don't get to get their fair share of exposure because of that. Money wise, again, I think when we started, it was great in the early 2000s because internet piracy wasn't too bad at that point, and people were buying, you know, CDs from us online and buying t-shirts and vinyls and all that kind of stuff, and we were selling some downloads and stuff like that. There was obviously some illegal downloading, which was actually beneficial at the beginning because people were discovering our music. We probably wouldn't, you know, who would have heard of us only for they shared our music. So in one way, we're very grateful to that. Of course, then it went to the phase where everything you couldn't, the minute your album was out, it was leaked and nobody really wanted to buy it. And, you know, there was that. Of course, then Spotify came around and had the answer, which was to stream your music but give you very little money. And they seem to be on this quest to give you, the artist, less and less money as time progresses, which is not a good thing at all. I just think there should be a minimum amount of money they should pay per play, and I think it's a little bit way too low at this point. And Apple was good at the start with iTunes, but since they kind of swapped it over to Apple Music, it's not been great for the artists either. I found a lot of people now, you know, that would have bought things in iTunes are happy just to use Apple Music, and that again wasn't a positive step for the artist. One of the few sites I do really like is Bandcamp. I think there's a better attitude from that particular organization. That they seem to want to give something back to the artist. They do these every Friday. They kind of have a deal where all the money goes to the artist. You don't see the other platforms doing that, so I think that's great. I really think Bandcamp is, to me, is by far the best one for artists at the moment. Apart from that, you know, obviously YouTube has always been popular and people get to see your stuff in there. It doesn't pay very well either, but it does get a lot of exposure, and a lot of people have discovered our music through YouTube as well. Again, you've got to be able to put video content up there, and it's very, very difficult to justify putting a lot of money into a video and only get maybe 100,000 plays on it as well. So you have to be very careful how you manage your campaign. So we try to do our best to try and do a lot of it as much as we can, and find people that are fans of the band that, you know, or do music for the same reasons that we do, which is for the love of it. And I think that's important because it's not just about making money. It's about putting something meaningful out there and giving, you know, something back to the audience. So we do what we can. Live gigs has been extremely important overall, because it's one of the few places where we can still sell physical stuff better, because you can, of course you can sell physicals online, but most people, you know, they don't want to pay for the shipment and all this. So when we do tours and we bring all the vinyls with us, people do buy them, and so that's been a bit of a hit now that we haven't been able to tour in the last 2 years, because we did sell a good lot of merchandise, and that's been good. But that's kind of my, yeah, again, overall, I think there's definitely a lot bad and probably a little bit more good about where the scene is today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but Bandcamp is great because, like you mentioned, you know, 90%, I think 90 cents of a dollar go directly to the artist, right? It's supposed to, but Spotify, it's a ripoff of Spotify. It's crazy. It's stealing. I mean, I think to me, it seemed to me that all the artists should get together, create like a union, and complain about and take the music out of Spotify, and then out of Spotify will go out of business. It's very, very unfair. You need to have, I think you get paid like 0.0007 of a cent. So you need to have like 100, 1 million hits a month to get a check for $70 or whatever that happens to be. That's crazy. That's crazy.
It is. And what some artists are doing, which I think again isn't a positive thing, they're starting to make music to suit the playlists. So what I've noticed is, if you, I mean, we come from obviously back in time where the albums are quite varied. You might have a slow song, you might have a heavy song, you might have, you know, different kind of variations and styles within the album. But what really seems to work, from what I can see, is if you have one style of track all the way across. So if you're just doing ambient music, for example, you'll get into a lot of ambient playlists. But if you have 1 or 2 ambient, 1 or 2 heavy, 1 or 2 this and 1 or 2 that, you don't get on to as many playlists, because they don't know what they're going to get when they listen to your stuff. So to me, it's almost become a part where people are starting to release albums for like music for dreaming, music for sleeping, music for, you know, for different things. And it's also unhealthy, because you're losing the kind of the different styles of, or different kinds of songs that albums used to have. Now they're just kind of delving into one style, so it's easier for them to sell it onto the playlists, and that of course gets more plays, you know. And we don't quite fit that well in with that line of thinking, because I don't want to write a record that just has only ambient songs or only heavy songs. We like to kind of have a little bit of different things, you know, to shape up, because when you think about life, you have ups and downs. It's not just all heavy songs, it's not all quiet songs. And I think just the way Spotify works with their playlists, it doesn't really reward artists like that who try to make different kinds of songs within an album. So I kind of hate that part of Spotify as well. So, and I know we have a decent amount of listenership on Spotify, and it matches the plays that we have, where you see some artists have very little following, but they have loads of plays, and this is because they're getting onto those playlists. So you can understand why they would make that kind of music, so they can kind of, you know, get as many listens as they can per month. But that kind of goes against my grain. I want to write music for me and not for an algorithm or anything like that.
Absolutely, and it's inefficient, because if to make a difference, millions of people need to be listening to an ambient record that you don't like, but you were forced to put out there, and then the money for you guys, it comes when playing live, right? Doing gigs, right? So then it will be very difficult to get new gigs if you only do ambient music, right? And you get another extra $100 for Spotify. So at the end, you need to do what you like and what you happy doing, and find other means to record their investment, or make in my example, the extra $100 you would have made in Spotify doing music that you don't like, right? So like merchandise, selling t-shirt, take picture with the guys at the end of the show, or a selfie, or selling CDs or whatever. You can record that money that way, if you and do what you like I mentioned before, doing music without compromise, the stuff that you go to bed every night and say, man, I like the stuff, we didn't do that well, but it was a very well record put together. We are very happy. I wouldn't change a thing. let's move on to the next gig and so on and so forth. So at the end of the day, yeah, you got to do what you like and be happy with it, you know.
I think really important and become increasingly more important for that very reason, where it's allowed us to make the music we want to make, and may not get the maximum amount of Spotify plays we could make if we had just pigeonholed it as just one type of music.
Sure.
Live allows to make the revenue and gives us the kind of music we want to make. So it's been tough now that it's gone, but Gods and Astronaut, I think, is moving more and more so into that area of a live working band rather than a studio project as it was when it began. To me now, it's a band that rehearses twice a week without any exception. Every week we do 2 rehearsals, and we write together as a band. We write, obviously, you know, in the studio for the fine-tuned parts, but we're always jamming, trying to make as interesting music as we can. So to me, I want to make music that's uncompromising and have a good live audience, rather than put all our eggs in one basket and have, you know, just a load of Spotify playlists playing your stuff. Because what happens when and if Spotify should one day, you know, find it's not popular anymore, that means a lot of people's careers could go along with it, and we don't want to be in that situation. We want to make sure that we're independent and that we have our own audience base that are loyal to us and we're loyal to them, and that's what's important.
Absolutely. You mentioned the word independence. This is, I think, the second album that is under Napalm Records, and I was looking at that. That's more like a metal record label, right? How you end up working with the guys is beneficial, so beneficial, as opposed to the other way, well, be independent and do self-releases. Where you draw the line between these two things?
We've released most of the records on our own label, and we've kept our back catalog on our own label. The only label that we'd worked prior to Napalm Records was Rocket Girl in the UK, who we loved working with. Vanita, she's still has our Origins record, and I think she re-released the All Is Violent record and A Moment of Stillness record about a year after we did, and did a fantastic job, better than we ever could, and did a really, really good job. But we always wanted to kind of keep it more like just kind of the smaller the better in many ways for us. So we kind of released most of the records after that again on our own label. We were approached by Napalm 3 or 4 years ago at this point, and Sebastian, just really impressed with talking to him. He said, look, I've been watching your career for a while, and I just think maybe with Napalm we could help you guys get up to a slightly bigger exposure than what you have at the moment. It seems to me that you're kind of just bubbling, but never really kind of, you're not getting German charts, you're not getting the stuff that we can help you guys with. So we said, well, as long as we get to keep our back catalog, we'll do a 3-album deal and see what happens. They were a metal label at the time. They were very much interested in kind of branching out beyond metal, and there was you know, talks of kind of signing different kinds of music, and they have signed some different kind of groups, to be fair. The metal audience do understand our music as a whole. We've played festivals like Brutal Assault and things where you would think our music wouldn't resonate, but it really had worked well. Things like Feral Lost and stuff going down well, and at a really heavy metal festival, you know, it was quite kind of amusing to us to see that it even worked. So we knew that there was some crossover there, and we thought maybe this could be a good idea, because the indie side never really embraced us as much as we thought they should have. So you know, we said, why not give this kind of metal label a chance and see what they can do. I think it's been positive. They have a lot of followers on their YouTube channel. A lot of people that would never have heard our music have heard it. We did get into the German charts, you know, into the top 30. So they have done the things that they said they would do. Whether we resign again, I don't know. It's too early for me to say. We kind of miss the days of where we can just put out our records when we want to put them out. We don't have to wait 6 or 7 months to put something out. So we kind of miss that kind of freedom, but we understand it's a huge marketing campaign that they want to do. And even to get vinyls today, you know, it takes apparently 6 months waiting list for you to even get your vinyls made. So you know, who knows, if we went with a label, maybe it'd be very difficult even to get vinyls made at this point. But we've kept our artistic freedom. That was something that was really important. There's no A&R ringing us back up saying, listen, we think you can do better. They're just trusting our judgment on it, and that was important to us. We don't want to be told by anybody else. You know, I think what's always worked is when myself and my brother Niels kind of are on the same page with the music, and with Lloyd and Jamie kind of, you know, also getting their approvals always been really important for us. But yeah, it's been good overall, but of course there is a few odd. Some of the metal people don't like our stuff, and they're wondering where the vocals are, and you get a lot of that kind of stuff going on. But that's nothing new to us. We can accept we can accept that criticism and not lose any sleep over it. I think we've done pretty well with our last two albums. With Napalm, we had the Epitaph album, which was written a 7-year-old cousin who passed away, and Ghost Tapes, which is a slightly more kind of aggressive, more live kind of record. Both done pretty well with the fans, and we're working now on another one which we feel is another step, encompassing maybe a bit of Epitaph and encompassing Ghost Tapes and the best qualities that I think that we've shown over the years included in that sound. And we've written two songs so far that we're really happy with, and that'll probably be coming out next year. We have a live record with Napalm this year coming out. It's already finished last year with the live album of and beginning, which we're calling the beginning of the end, not to scare anybody, it's just to separate. And coming out, yeah, I think it's coming out in June this year, and we're really, really excited. It's turned out really, really well, better than any of the other live stuff that we put out last year. It's definitely a notch above those ones, so we're looking forward to seeing people's reaction on that. And we have a few videos coming out as well of those songs. From Dusk to the Beyond is going to be one of the singles, and it was always a very different song live. It has extra parts that the record didn't have, and it's turned out to be one of the biggest live songs that we have, because it just has such, all the improvisational parts that we've written turned out to you know, to be really something special. So we've captured all that on the record, and we're looking forward to seeing how that goes down.
I got you. That's great. I wanna bring your attention to some tracks. I think I picked the top 3 or the top 4 from Spotify, and I really like that. If you can remember, you know, if not, it's okay. What can you tell me about All Is Violin, All Is Bright from the album with the same name? I think that's from 2011. Do you remember how this composition came together, or how the album came together? Feel free to elaborate on that if you remember.
Yeah, that was the remastered ones were in 2011. It was originally written in 2003. I think released 2004, re-released through Rock Girl in 2005. I can just remember at the time when we were writing it, there was the whole Gulf War thing, and we were just looking at all these explosions happening on the television, and you know, we came up with the phrase "all is violent, all is bright." You know, it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek kind of type. And I just remember, I'm trying to remember who. I think Niels came up with a guitar line. I think the first guitar line and the bass arpeggio, and then you know, I wrote some of the other parts after, the heavier parts, and Lloyd was kind of trying to experiment with the idea of going from half pace to double time and a few things like that. Musically, I think we were in a kind of isolated, to me, that always feels like the Snow album to me. It feels like Icescapes. It feels like, I even remember having Niels had this kind of cover that I actually I kind of took a photocopy of it and put it on the wall. We were kind of working to this idea of a soldier in World War II with you know, with the ice and everything around, snowing all around them. So there was kind of very much that kind of vibe throughout that record. When Everything Dies was kind of the last song on that record. Was like again, it was a very much an apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic kind of song. So we were in that kind of apocalyptic kind of mind when we were writing that kind of music. And still make sure that we have those songs live no matter what we do. We still play All's Vinyl, All's Bright live. And obviously we have the All's Vinyl, All's Bright only shows coming up this year as well in celebration of that record as well, which should have happened 2 years ago. But
I got you. Another great track is Frozen. I think it's Frozen Twilight.
That's right. Yeah, that was written after the All's Vinyl record. It was in many ways very similar to the All's Vinyl record. It was a little bit more meditative, I would say, and a little bit less aggressive. It was a little bit more dreamy. That's a song we also still play live, and we'll make sure, because we know well aware it's a popular song. It's a very lovely. The guitar arpeggio, I remember writing that first, and I had a kind of a small background vocal melody, and that came out in 2006, if I'm not mistaken. And it's a really just again captures, I think, a kind of isolation and loneliness. That was kind of what I got from it. There's this great video on YouTube that we didn't do, but I don't know where they got the footage from, but it has these wolves going through the snow, and just that captures that song perfectly, you know. And so even live now, what we've done, just we've even put some samples of wolves in the background. It's just kind of really haunting. So it's a really haunting piece of music, and it really resonates really, really well still to this day with us.
The other one from Spotify is the last March. I don't know if you guys play live that again. You have like a wide range of stuff, and all your albums different. So for the musician, right? When you get together with your brother and the other two guys, well, let's put 2 hours of set list. What how we should play, and it might be difficult, right? Because you have a lot to offer. Some stuff is harder to make it play live. Other stuff is easy to play live. But how you decide what what to how you create a set list, or and so forth.
Getting harder because what we did anyway is this. I'll say this much. Last year, since we have so much time off, we actually expanded the amount of songs that we can play live to about 65. So we can actually play 65 different songs, which does include Last March, I might add. We've nearly represented nearly every single song off our albums. We have them all learnt off. Even songs like Shores of Orion, which were obscure songs that we never really paid much attention to, but Robert Smith from The Cure said it was his favorite song, so we decided we'll learn it off just for that reason alone. So we have that song learnt off. But how do we pick it? One thing that we do is we want to, first of all, the new stuff is Ghost Tapes, and it takes precedent because that's the album that's current. That's the album that we want to push. Those songs go in, the ones that we feel are the strongest songs live, we'll put those in live. And then we'll try to surround them with other songs that we feel suit the mood of that album, but also take into consideration some of the songs that are the most popular. And we make sure those songs also enter in the set. And those songs are some of the ones that you mentioned there, which are would be, of course, All Is Vinyl, All Is Bright. It would be Frozen Twilight. It would be Suicide by Star Live, is very, very popular. Echoes is another one that's may not show up on your Spotify stats as very popular, but live we get in trouble when we don't play that song. Songs like Fragile are important, and Forever Lost is probably one of the most important songs as well. We try to encompass as many of those songs as we can into the set list, but also, as I said, shape the set list to suit some of the vibe of the newer record. So at the moment, I think we have 2 set lists outside the All Is Violent, All Is Bright only show, which does that album in its entirety. And then we do about 5 or 6 songs from Ghost Tapes after that. We also then have sets made up for after that's finished, and we have a set A and a set B. And between set A and set B, we encompass most of the most popular tracks along with Ghost Tapes. And that's kind of how we do it. How long do we make the set is interesting. Myself and Niels differ of opinion on. Niels is adamant that he thinks we should only be playing 1 hour and 20 minutes. He just feels that he wants to leave the audience wanting more. I'm kind of on the side, wanting to give the audience everything they paid for and leave it at that. So we've compromised a little bit on that, so we're kind of in between the 2 worlds. We don't want obviously our audience getting bored. I don't want to shortchange them either. So I think our set's just a little bit over. It's been an hour and 25, I think, at the moment. So I think that's a good length, and we want to make sure that there's good production and everybody's, you know, thoroughly entertained. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing our job right. So I think that's kind of a good length for us at this point in time. But yeah, at festivals we'd probably play shorter. It'd probably be only 55 minutes or something like that, because there's the audience there and not familiar with who we
Absolutely.
are.
I was able to listen to your latest album, the Ghost Tapes, and I found it perhaps more up tempo, more progressive, if we will. I don't know if I'm using the correct word or not, but it's different from the other one. I like it. There are two different things. You know, you may like this kind of literature and that kind of literature. They don't have to be one. They don't have to compete with one another. But you guys started when they were, you know, 18, 20 years old, and now you're 40. So you evolve over time. The music tastes overall, your music habits are evolve over time. So you need to do what you like. But it's different, and I like it as well. It's.
I think for us, it's kind of we separate the style and the content, maybe to kind of explain it better. Stylistically, we don't want to continuously repeat ourselves from what we've done, because we feel it will weaken some of the songs that we've done. We don't want to have Forever Lost Part 2 or Fragile Part 2 or All's Violent Part 2. And what happens then, it gets messy, because it just kind of weakens the originality of the songs that we've put out in the past, and we want to kind of keep those. So the back catalogue is extremely important to us. Everything that we put out is extremely important. Even now, you know, the amount of work that's gone into the All Is Violent album, like in rehearsals, is equal to what we've done with Ghost Tapes. We keep updating all our songs stylistically to make sure that they're fresh and that they're, you know, if we can find a better way of executing those songs, we would certainly do that. Ghost Tapes, again, I think we were in this kind of, emotionally, we felt like we were trapped. We couldn't, you know, this whole COVID thing had hit, and we really, not that it was written just about that, but we just felt like we had to, like something was after us, and this kind of has this kind of tension to the record that I think has been captured on it. Emotively, you know, maybe it isn't as melancholy, or as kind of, how would you put it, as kind of, it's not an overly emotional record like I say, like All's Violent. It's certainly it's just a more live, aggressive kind of vibe to the record. But I like it for that, you know, because it's its own thing. And I think songs that kind of represent that album pretty good is Burial, and for me, I think it probably will be Fade as the other two that I would recommend for people to listen. I think that kind of captures the mood. There's definitely a darkness there that runs through a lot of our stuff, and I think Burial to me captures it perfectly. The album before that, I should mention, Epitaph, was more of a doom record, but that was because our 7-year-old cousin, his life was taken, and it was just such a shocking incident for all of us here that we had to capture something. So that kind of just was born out of what was happening in our lives, and a lot of the things are influenced by what we're going through as people. So who knows what record we'll put next, because to me, style is only there to help the content. It's not there to dictate what we should do next. The content will always dictate what we will do next. Saying that, I don't like the idea, and I see this quite a lot happening, where if you're playing post-rock kind of music, it's like you have to release something emotional, because that's the kind of the vibe of that kind of music. That to me is insincere. And if I'm going to write something that's a tearjerker or emotional music, it'll be honest. And I don't feel as emotional as I did maybe 20 years ago. I think, you know, maybe life hardens you up in ways, or we just become more numb to things as time goes on. So it's very difficult for me to write a song like Fragile or something like that. It has to happen. Usually things like that happen when something really bad happens, you know, and in a song like Epitaph, for example, was written in memory of Oisin. So that kind of stuff happens when really bad stuff happens. in Ghost Tapes, we were just, as I said, moving on from all of that and trying to put it behind us. And I think that's the kind of record that we made. The new record stuff that I can just tell you what we're working on at the moment is kind of, I'd say it's extremely dark, but it kind of makes sense because nobody can see nearly a light at the end of the tunnel of what's happening at the moment. It's definitely very dark, and it's definitely very twisted melodies. They're, I would say, bitter, very bitter sounding, with some sweet moments thrown in, which I really like because it offers a kind of a nostalgia and some hope at the same time. And it's refreshing. It's just different. It's not like we're writing something sweet and something melodic for the sake of it. It's put in just in the right way, and I think that's kind of what this record is shaping up to be next. So who knows?
Yeah, that is going to be the one. It's going to be that. Is that one going to be released before the live one that you mentioned?
Oh, the live one will come out in July, and I think Napalm will only put this next stuff that we're working out in next year, 2023. But I thought this record finish. If the touring doesn't happen, we'll finish it probably before April this year, because I think we've got a lot of healthy ideas that you know that can definitely be turned into really serious bits of music. But yeah, no, we're experimenting with different kind of objects and drums and different stuff that we're sampling, and you know there's a lot of interesting stylistically new things that we haven't done before that we're embracing as well. But musically, I definitely think it's going to be anywhere between Epitaph, bit of Ghost Tapes, and definitely some of the golden moments of what people have come to expect from us, some really lovely melodies. And that's something that we're hoping to put a little bit more emphasis on melodies on this record anyway. That's kind of the aim.
That's beautiful. And talking about the tour, I think you guys, if things go well, you will start playing Sheffield, which is a beautiful music town, and then you go to Manchester, and then London, and so on and so forth. Is there any particular reason, stupid question, why you guys go to the UK first? No, you don't start your own country, and then from there it's logistics.
Initially, I think the dates of the Irish and the English shows were happening one after another because of the whole COVID thing again. It got postponed, and England was moved to March. But we were fortunate enough to do the Irish dates back in late November, when there was a little window we just got in where we were able to do the couple of shows here in Ireland, which were, you know, it felt like at least that week everything was back to normal, which was great. And we played the All's Violent Ghost Tape show in Dublin and in Cork, and hopefully we can get to do it in March in the UK. Things have changed though since we've been away from the. Now you've got the Brexit thing there, where you know it's now a little more difficult to play in the UK. You have to have what's called a carnet. You can't just drive over with your equipment. You now have to have take a bond out, you know, for the value of your, or 30% value of your equipment. You have to put that bond up. So it's a bit difficult and a lot to ask for us to kind of, since we've been off for so long, but we'll have to find quite a bit of money to put up in order to even to play those shows. And that's unfortunate. I think that's kind of the whole Brexit thing. Whatever people's opinion of it is, it definitely hasn't been great for the musicians, that's for sure, for themselves or for people visiting England. But we're fortunate enough that you know, we're in a position to still come over and do those shows, and they've sold pretty well, so we're really looking forward to those shows.
I have only like two or three questions left. Looking back in your career, any particular moment that are important to you? Any regrets, things you would have done differently? It's easy to change. Looking back, it's very difficult to look forward and not to make changes, right? So,
yeah, there's obviously things that there's a couple of things I would have liked to have changed. You know, maybe one of them would be not as putting out as many records as we did. I kind of wished in one way that we kind of were a little bit more patient sometimes, and you know, maybe condensed one or two records together to make a better album. So I find now I just like to take my time and not put too much music out there, because I think there's so much out there, and we've put so much music out there, and I think each band has a lifespan of how much music you can put out there and keep interesting and not repeat yourself. So I'm very, very conscious of that now, and we're you know, it's kind of difficult, you know, every time I have something thinking, shit, I wrote something similar to that 6 years ago. So it makes it more difficult now. I have to be really careful of the melodies and style that we do. So it would have been easier had we condensed a few. That would be the first thing I'd say. The other one I would say is, I wish I had more patience over the years and just a kind of a cooler temperament for certain situations. I think with time, it's definitely you do kind of mellow out as time progresses. But at this, certainly for a lot of my career, I was very kind of hyper driven and very focused, and it's very hard to suddenly switch off. So sometimes that's been bad for my mental health, not being able to kind of calm down and just be, just meditate for a bit and chill out. So I think I wish I kind of maybe done meditation or something over the course of my career. But yeah, I just think patience is a virtue, and I think that's something that I would like to go back and tell myself, to be patient and just be as respectful as you can to everybody. I think that's important. Sometimes, you can forget those things. Apart from that, what's been important, I think at many points of our career, just having, everything from the MTV plays was important, just to even get, that was essentially our start of getting noticed, to booking agents, taking us on board and giving us shows, to meeting Robert Smith from The Cure was a really, happy moment for us, to playing festivals like Brutal Assault, to Arctangent and all those kind of things, to playing in Italy and Russia and Germany, the US, India, all that stuff. They're all little highlights. So they're all, some of my fondest memories are playing in New York and even Russia and St. Petersburg and Moscow. All those things are just, I look back and very fondly. And I think we're extremely lucky to be able to play places from all the way from Turkey to Greece to Russia to India to China. The only place we've never played is Japan, and
Really? Wow.
Yeah, we've never. So, or Australia, I should say, and those are the places we'd like to play. But who knows? It would be nice to finally get there at some point.
Gotcha. What do you do for fun, not music related, when you're not working or recording? What, anything in particular?
Yeah, my wife is a photographer, and she does our lights as well. So she likes to take a lot of pictures up in the mountains and stuff. So I like to go for walks and up to the Sugarloaf, into the forests. I love all that kind of stuff. I do like playing tennis. I haven't played in a while now, but I do like tennis. And apart from that, I do like watching movies and sci-fi movies, probably my favorite, and horror movies, that kind of stuff. I like to yeah, just that kind of thing. I like watching good documentaries and all that kind of stuff. And obviously apart from that, what else do I do? Yeah, just kind of I like to live a quite simple life. I'm not a very overly sociable person that likes to go out drinking or anything like that. I kind of like to keep to myself, and I live a kind of solitary enough private life. I like to be outdoors in nature. It kind of frees my mind. It's always good to get out of the studio and just free your mind. And apart from that, going to the cinema and a couple of stuff like that, and good meals now and then, that would be kind of it for me.
Great. And the last question, feel free to mention the website, the name of the Bandcamp account, so the listener to this interview can buy your music, and so you can feel free to mention the names.
Cool. It's we're on if you type in godisanastronaut.com or www.godisanastronaut.com, that takes you to our Bandcamp page automatically. We also are there on Spotify. If you just type in God is an Astronaut, we're on there. On Facebook, Instagram. We have our own YouTube channel if anybody wants to watch our videos. Again, I just type God is an Astronaut in the search bar, and we'll come up in the channel. What else would I say? If you're interested in live dates, the best site would probably be Bands in Town, which is, I think, just go to bandsintown.com, type in God is an Astronaut, and you can see all our dates that we have. I guess I should do a small message to our US bands. It is definitely our intention to come back again at some point to play play the US. It's very, very important to us. It costs an awful lot of money to go there, but we are still determined to try and make it happen. We do have a very loyal booking agent in the US that's always trying to make it happen. But it may take 2 years before we come back, I think, at this point, because it's just the financial situation. We really need to try and make as much money as we can here to try and fund ourselves again and get back up. And the small things, you know, as time progresses, you know, things like even your, you know, our van is getting old at this point, and then they're changing it to electric, and you know how much longer you can drive a diesel van around the place. So there's a lot of things changing, yet there's not much on the marketplace to, you know, to replace those things at the moment. You know, electric doesn't work in places like Romania, for example, you know, where there's very little of those things. So we're trying to build our company as best as we can and have a good money and resources so we can continue on for another 10 years.
Rich. Well, Torsten, thank you very much for your time, and I know it's getting late for you, and it was very nice talking to you. I will send you a different, you know, separate mail with some CDs that I want to get from you and the link to the interview. It was very nice talking to you. Hopefully, I as I mentioned before, I saw you, I think I wrote the day here. I saw you guys in September 14, 2019, on a place called Rock and Roll Hotel. I don't remember. You don't remember?
I vaguely remember. I think that was maybe the third date we did, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think Niels was there for that show because there was a loss in the family. So it was kind of nerve-wracking for me. We had to spread the duties around amongst the other guys in the band.
Yeah.
It was tough, but yeah, we were just really happy to be there at the same time. And we definitely want to come back to Washington and bring the Ghost Tapes album, or maybe even the album after, but we'll be playing the best of it.
Yeah, hopefully we'll, when you play here again, or if I happens to be in the UK or somewhere in the world, we'll get together for dinner or a beer or two, and we'll continue in touch. But thank you very much for your time. Thank you to the other band member, and looking forward to hearing from you, man. Good luck to you. Thank you. No problem.
Very much. Take care.